I've got very little recall about the first, really the first month in Korea. There's bits and pieces that have come back, some of it by having conversations with guys at meetings like this. The thing I remember most vividly is Thanksgiving dinner, going through this field. It was a group of vehicles that had brought hot food up, and normally we didn't carry mess gear and things with us, but we did have our packs that we'd dropped, and of course we could retrieve them. And went through this line and got a big leg of turkey, and I don't like dark meat, so I remember that. And they had hot coffee, and got that in a canteen cup. Well, by the time you got through the line and found a place to sit down, which is a bank of snow or something, everything was ice cold, and including the coffee. And I remember thinking, why couldn't I have gotten white meat instead of this big old drumstick that I didn't like?
Couldn't find anybody to trade with, huh?
No one to trade. And I just remember getting the dinner and finding a place to sit down. I really don't remember eating it, but we weren't there very long. You never were in one place very long. Of course, after we left, or I left the next summer, the Korean War kind of started the first year. It was like World War II. Then the second 2 years of Korea was like World War I. It was trench warfare, and that's the things that I wasn't involved in, like Pork Chop Hill and that sort of thing. Those guys were they called it the Kansas line. We were digging in the Kansas line up where I was located was near the Wachon, or they call it Hakchon, Hwachon reservoir, and this was at the end of the Iron Triangle. That's what they called that combat in there. And we were, prior to that, we were on, most of my time was spent on the East Coast, the mountainous part of Korea. But after they gave us a brief rest, a little camp called I can't remember the name of it right now, but I remember that it was supposed to be a rest camp, and Makari, M-A-C-H-A-R-I, Makari, Korea. It was an old mining town, and it had a cable that went up over a cable car, not for personnel, but for coal. It was a mining town, and we got a shower and change of clothes there, and that was, I've got pictures of before and after when we came into there, and I sent them home, and I sent the film home, and it was processed, and I made a comment, I looked like Rip Van Winkle when I came in there, because where our boots were bloused, pants were bloused, that was all eaten away, and then the next picture was in clean clothes, that was the first change of clothes since November, and that was in March. And after we, like they were supposed to be getting a rest there, we had a new commander, and he was trying to raise morale in the outfit, so they had us doing bayonet drill for like 12 hours a day, so all of us were volunteering to go up on outpost, to get away from having to do that bayonet drill. But it was, in a way, it was a rest because we got clean clothes and a shower. But we really did a lot of work out there, training and bayonet.
Did he ever explain why he thought that would help to raise morale?
We went into. His name was Lynch, and he gave it a name, called us Lynch's Tigers, and a bayonet outfit. And it was a $50 fine to be caught without your bayonet on your rifle unless you were cleaning the rifle. And same way for a helmet, you had to have your helmet on. And we went into an operation when we came out at 1 week rest camp called. This wasn't just our unit; it was the whole line. It was called Operation Killer, and it was very demoralizing because the way the operation, of course, at our level, we're the grunts, we didn't know why this was all happening. We didn't even at the time know it was named Operation Killer. But the reason it was named that and the way it worked was we'd take the hill, and then after darkness we'd retreat, whether we were being fired on or not. Well, while we were taking the hill, of course, all of our artillery and mortars behind us zeroed in on that hill in front of us. Then, once they did, they'd lift that barrage as we took the hill, and we'd hold it all day, and then whether they were hitting us or not, we'd retreat that night just to take it again the next morning. And so it was demoralizing to take it, lose men, and it was very strenuous, a lot of activity, and then just give it away. But the whole idea was when we'd come out at night, then as the enemy did make their attack, we weren't there, and they'd rain the artillery and mortars then on them, and then we'd take it again the next morning. And I had been badly frostbitten by then, and I'd been evacuated twice already, and I walked on my toes. I couldn't put any weight on my heels, and they tried various things, different boots and what have you when they'd get evacuated, but and they'd thaw them out, but they really didn't get any better until I finally came home in July. But we at the end of that Operation Killer, which lasted 2 or maybe 3 weeks, it was a long time. I remember in one of the retreats, of course I knew we were going right back the next morning because we always did. I was having a lot of difficulty walking and running because I was running on my toes, and that's good exercise for the calves, but it also caused a lot of cramping. And so I decided I'd just hide and catch it when they came back up. And it was a long, long night. I didn't do that anymore, but I was able to stay hidden, but I was severely reprimanded because I wasn't there to be counted, when they got back. And then we got out of that operation. We were hurriedly trucked over to this old West Central front near the Watchung Reservoir, and in this Iron Triangle, the ROK, the ROKs we called them, Republic of Korea, South Korean troops. A division of them had first off, there was 90,000 Chinese trapped in that Iron Triangle, and but they probed until they found the ROK division, and that was the weak link in the chain, and they were pouring out. They overran that division. They were pouring out, and we were hurriedly trucked over to try and plug that hole. And we did plug the hole. And but it was the action in and around the Watchung Reservoir was there was a lot of mistakes made, and we were on 2 occasions, one of them very, very bad. We were involved in friendly fire aircraft, and we had 2 flights of one flight of 4 was jet fighter aircraft, and back then it was F-80, and the other 4 were propeller-driven, either Marine or Navy. Didn't have any way of knowing, but it was one of those 2 because it was Corsairs, and the Marines and Navy were the only ones that flew the Corsairs, prop Corsairs, and we were in an attack. Since this all happened, and I go to these reunions and things, I've talked a number of times with was Colonel McCaffrey then, and he retired as Lieutenant General. His son Barry is the drug czar. He too is a general. He outranked his dad by 1 star, and Colonel Bill McCaffrey, William, came up there on the line. He told me after we had jumped off, Major Holland gave the order for us to jump off and attack. And to do this, we had to go up this ridge line to get to this ridge where the enemy was. And my company commander, who was Lieutenant Childers then, argued with him that there was supposed to be a rolling barrage of artillery, and then as soon as that lifted, the airstrike was supposed to happen. And Major Holland told him that to jump off, the airstrike had been canceled, and we did jump off, and we were about halfway up this ridge, taking a lot of fire from the people we were attacking. And these aircraft rolled in on us without our even knowing it. I mean, they were in there before we knew it. And so we were getting fire already, but then this other fire came in, and it was from another direction, and napalm also, napalm bombs. And and you looked up, they looked like a football, badly thrown football lobbed in, you know. They don't have a clean ballistic trajectory or anything, and so they you never knew where they were going to hit. They were lobbing through the air, and looked like everyone was going to hit you right in the head, and a lot of our guys were running, you know, on fire, which didn't help them, but that was an automatic reaction, I guess. And anyway, I survived the strafing and the napalm both. And McCaffrey relieved Holland on the spot, and then ripped him out of the army, the Major Holland, for doing what he did. But anyway, we lost an awful lot of our men, and then shortly after that, they made a task force to try and take another hill. They tried to make one company out of what was left of the whole battalion, and we really didn't have a full complement, a full company of men. But we did take the hill that they gave us, and then a platoon of us, and in this action we're working with guys that we didn't even know each other, mostly, from different outfits that were made up.
I have to interrupt you.
the task force that was made up, almost company size, we were able to take the hill they gave us, and then about a platoon of us went on a probing patrol out in front of the area where we'd set up a defense perimeter, and we walked into an ambush that caused us to be pinned down, and I can remember the buttons on my fatigues clothing felt like gallon cans. You know, they were holding me up off the ground, and I distinctly remember trying to move them so I could get closer. And some guy here, guy there would, out of panic or whatever reason, they'd think they could get away, you know, and they'd get up, and of course they didn't get away. And we were pinned there for well over an hour, and we could look at our line, you know, and but those guys couldn't. There wasn't anything they could do right then. They finally did get some mortars and artillery back down off the hill, assembled where they could give us some covering fire, and most of us were able to get out of there, but it was a pretty bad experience. But then we did get back to this little perimeter we had set up, and they came in more force, and we lost the hill. And I was one of half dozen, I guess, that was volunteered to delay fight a delaying action. And by then it was nighttime, and it had been raining all day too, and it was still raining. And when we had held as long as we could, and the six of us we all left at once, you know, trying to. Of course, there was no cover then except from down below us in this creek or riverbed. There was a line of it was the 15th AAA. Those guys are here, and with quad 50s on half tracks, and then twin 20s and twin 40s on full track vehicles. And then our tanks were at the creek bed. They were all firing right over our head to give us fire, you know, give us cover. I remember the tracers and things, it looked like a ceiling, you know, and of course the noise was horrendous, but we were going as fast as we could, you know, downhill, and it was, like I say, black night and raining. And I remember falling, you know, and it seemed like I fell for 10 minutes. Of course I didn't, but my helmet was off and trying to choke me, and my rifle was doing the same thing, you know. I just slung the rifle. I couldn't fire going down that hill, and I gathered myself up and did make it to the bottom of the hill. And then we crossed through that small river creek, and a guy from near my hometown, and he was from Fort Smith or Barling, Arkansas. A guy named Guy Smith. He and I sat on our helmets back behind these track vehicles that were still holding fire down, and we sat on our helmets under his poncho. My poncho had been used that day to make a litter, you know, to take a wounded guy downhill. And then I got my field jacket, along with another field jacket, made another litter. So I didn't have a field jacket or a poncho either. So Smitty and I sat under his poncho, and we chain smoked cigarettes trying to keep it warm in there, you know. And someone about before daylight, an hour or two before daylight, someone came along we weren't in a defensive line. We were all just back there behind these weapons. Someone came along there whispering, or a loud whisper, looking for Smitty. Well, we had two Smiths, one Oliver and one Guy. And I told Smitty, they're calling for you, and he said, to hell with them, I'm staying here, And so finally they got up closer, and he said, yeah, what do you want? And they said, come with me to the CP, or the company command post. You're going home. And so he thought he was kidding, he wasn't. And so he gave me his field jacket and left me his poncho. And so it turns out both Smitties were going home. Of course, they went together. But then early that morning, we had to retake that hill, and we finally did. We got up there, and of course we had used a lot of ammo on the way up, and as usual, that you'd get a pack train, guys bringing up ammunition and food and usually water on backpacks. And it turns out both those Smitties that were supposed to be on their way home showed up in this pack train. They volunteered to bring up more ammo, and I remember the company commander, Lieutenant Childers, really chewing them out for, he said, get off this hill and get off now. You're supposed to be going home, and they did, of course. But, I was evacuated again. I was in we were on a perimeter defense, and I was talking to this guy. I can't tell you who he is. I don't know. Like I say, they put us together. He was from my battalion, but he was from a different company, and after a while, you really didn't ask names, a lot of guys, we'd call them from their state, Pennsylvania or whatever. And this guy and I were in a hole together, and I have no idea what we were talking about, but next thing I knew, I had come to, and they were wiping my face, and there was a lot of blood, but it was from concussion. My ears were bleeding, my nose, my mouth, and of course it had thrown me into a lot of dirt, and they were trying to find out where the blood was coming from, and so they finally did, and the medic then back then sulfathizole was a cure-all, so he treated my ears with that sulfathizole and then packed them, which I couldn't hear anyway from the noise, but or from the concussion, I guess. Anyway, they took me back to the aid station a few hours later, and they cleaned me up some more back there, and they asked me to sign a form there on a clipboard, and I said, "What's it for?" And they said, "It's for Purple Heart if we ever get the paperwork back." And they wanted your name, rank, serial number, and your home town, state. And I said, "They've got all that in my record somewhere. Why do you want it?" And they said, "So your parents can be notified." Well, I didn't want that. I didn't want them to be scared. frightened, and so I didn't sign it, and so I never got a Purple Heart. But I probably wouldn't have anyway, because the aid station was it came under fire, and they wound up putting us, after they struck the tents and threw everything on trucks, they put me and 3 other guys on top of this 2.5 ton 6x6 truck. We were on top of all the cargo, and they moved out and moved several miles and then set up again. And some of the more seriously wounded, went in ambulances, but those of us that could, they put us on top of that truck. And they took me back to the line, or back to my company then, and it wasn't too long after that I wandered off a road one day, and because I recognized these big guns, and it was a National Guard artillery outfit from my hometown, and I went wandering into that area, and it was like old home week, all these guys knew me, and one of them that was a forward observer, of course I didn't know they were back there at the time, but I knew there was a lot of it back there, but I didn't know who it was. And one of that Battery C 937 Field Artillery Battalion from my hometown, a guy named Billy Lovell, he came back to his unit, the artillery unit, and of course they knew that I was up there, and they knew what unit I was in. But he came back and said that's when we had really got wiped out with that airstrike. He said that there were no survivors, and they asked him, was it Primm's outfit? And he said, yeah. And he said he personally saw me. He didn't, but anyway, that got to my family, and that was very bad. Of course, they couldn't confirm it or anything, and that's what I didn't want to happen. That's why I wouldn't sign that thing at the aid station.
How soon after that did they find out that you were alive?
It was several weeks.
That's hard.
Of course, that was I never was in that situation. It was just bad information that got back to him,
Yeah.
And it would never have gotten back there had he not been from my hometown, and all of them knew me, and that's how it got. They communicated with their folks, and their folks went to mine, and of course we didn't in the infantry, you didn't everything you owned was in your pockets or in your shirt, and so you didn't have every now and then we'd get what's called a letter in one, and write it, and it'd fold up into an envelope and give it to the runner, and of course you didn't need stamps or anything. Give it to the runner, and platoon runner would take it to the company command post, which was always down behind us. And then when they had someone going out, they'd send all this mail out, and that wasn't very often that we got to do that.
So when did you finally leave Korea?
Pardon?
When did you finally leave Korea?
In July of 1951.
Was it just the end of your rotation, or were you evacuated out?
No, I was. I was due for rotation, but at the same time they discovered, or they decided to do something about it at that time, that I was enlisted fraudulently, underage, and I went to a rest hospital which was at Camp Drake, where I'd been before I went to Korea, near Tokyo. And one side of Camp Drake was the guys coming home, and they had Japanese orderlies, workers that made our bunks for us. And I remember getting there, and it was it's just wonderful. This big barracks with all these beds made with white collared, we called it, clean sheets and everything. I thought, boy, this is going to be fantastic. Well, the first morning, there wasn't over 2 or 3 guys in those bunks, and they were coming back from artillery or someplace where they had beds over in tents and things in Korea. But the other was of us, the rifleman type infantry. Those soft beds were very uncomfortable, believe it or not. So we were all on the floor sleeping, because we'd been used to, when we did get a chance to catch a few winks, we'd on the ground, and they only required us to. They gave us meal passes, and you required to. You didn't have to eat, but you had to go to 4 meals a day. One meal was at midnight, and you didn't go through a line like you normally do now. I mean, you went in, sat down at a table, and as soon as you were seated, there'd be a cold quart of milk there, and then you could order from 3 or 4 different entrees, what you wanted. And I remember it was such a waste, because we'd been living on rations, and sea rations, and although we were hungry, our stomachs weren't that large like they are now, and you could just a little bit of that milk and very little of the food, and you were full. You couldn't eat anymore. Because I used to get a bad time from the guys over there. I was kind of clowning around. We'd be on everybody miserably cold or wet and cold, and climbing a hill, and it seems like we were always climbing or going down one. And I'd say, boy, wouldn't a big strawberry milkshake and a cheeseburger. Well, everybody was hungry, and they'd threaten to kill me, and so when I did get back to this rest area in Japan, I went to the little like a snack bar area and service club type place, and I ordered a cheeseburger and a strawberry malt, and well, gosh, one bite of the cheeseburger and 2 sips of the malt, and I was full, and then there was, in this area, there was a book for every state, and I didn't know that on the way over, but on the way back, I found this one from Arkansas, and I was looking through it. Well, I got up to current, where I could sign. My brother, who was drafted, had signed that book about 2 hours earlier, and I looked, but I never did find him. Of course, he was on his way to Korea, and I was on my way back, and we were in different parts of the camp.